Hello friends, welcome back. Today we're doing an executive summary on a deal that just happened. So today we're recovering the acquisition of Elevation Oncology by a portfolio company of 10 capital partners called Concentra Biosciences. And so they bought the company for 36 cents per share in cash, which is a lot lower than its peak of over $2 per share that we saw during the height of the pandemic. However, that came with a CVR, a contingent value rate, which pays out up to an additional $2.65 per share if their lead candidate passes some milestones, specifically milestones around a compound called EO1022, which is a Claudin 18-point to antibody-drug conjugate. They also received 45 cents per share in September of 2023, which was a takeover premium at the time of 130%. So it looks like it's a pretty good deal for shareholders if this asset ends up succeeding. And so, what is this asset? Well, the product is a human anti-HER3 antibody-drug conjugate designed to deliver potent payload selectively to cancer cells overexpressing HER3, which is a receptor that we've seen play a role in various cancers, including non-small cell lung cancer, breast cancer, and ovarian cancer, among others. The therapeutic rationale is that unlike HER3 and EGFR, which have been heavily explored, HER3 remains largely underexploited, and so there's a need for effective treatments against HER3 overexpressing tumors, which may account for anywhere from 20 to 60% of various cancer types. And so this could be a big market. In terms of value proposition, I think there's a couple of things here. First off, I think there is opportunity to use this as a monotherapy or even in combination with immune checkpoint inhibitors in certain cancers. And secondly, given the fact that HER3 is less exploited, this could be a first-in-class or best-in-class within the ADC space for HER3-directed agents. And so that provides a sort of defensible niche within the ADC market. Then in terms of the market niche, we know that ADCs have delivered between 0.5 to 1 additional quality-adjusted life years per patient treated. We know that there's increasing physician and payer desire for effective alternatives to traditional chemotherapy, especially with more effective targeted agents coming on the market. And so, with this having a nice safety profile, which seems to be something that is becoming more and more favorable as we see data over time, this could be a good fit. And finally, in terms of value to payers, assuming it performs similar to other ADCs. And then in terms of the competition, as far as the competitive landscape goes, well, there is a lot of companies working on HER3 ADCs, but most notably, Seagen, which is now owned by Pfizer, has a collaboration with Daiichi Sankyo to develop 𝗕𝗥𝗘𝗩𝗪𝗏, which is a HER3 ADC that is currently in phase 3 trials for HER3 plus and SCLC and breast cancer. This agent has shown very high efficacy and manageable safety concerns, which is great. However, the product is still years away from launch, and there's opportunity for quicker, smaller molecules to get to market before it does. And so, this asset won't compete head-on with 𝗕𝗥𝗘𝗩𝗪𝗏, but instead, it'll look to either demonstrate superiority in terms of safety, combinability, or regulatory speed, or it'll serve a different unmet need altogether. And then in terms of the market access strategy going forward, well, it seems like they're going to take a staged approach. First, they are going to progress the asset into phase 1 and to trials to establish safety and early efficacy. Then they'll seek fast-track, breakthrough therapy, or orphan drug designation to try and accelerate these timelines. And third, they'll employ outcomes-based pricing models with payers, potentially including companion diagnostics to optimize patient selection. And this approach, seeking milestones along the way, could help them to reduce time to market, enhance payer engagement, and increase commercial potential. And finally, in terms of my questions around due diligence over the past year, why did the stock go down so much? What did management do wrong? Why is it such a good deal for Concentra to buy this company at such a low price? Well, first of all, the stock was hit hard when Elevation Oncology made the decision to stop development of their lead candidate HER3-ADC after it showed really weak phase 1 data. And that led to layoffs impacting about 70% of staff. And so that's bad for morale, culture, etc. The focus shifted to cash preservation and asset monetization. And so, the only reason they were even able to offer 36 cents per share is because they had about $26 million in cash on the balance sheet at the time of acquisition. And so, it's not a lot, but it's enough to keep the lights on for a little bit, especially if they can make this new asset work. And so, they were hoping that they can generate value by developing this asset and not necessarily keeping the company public. So, they're trying to save face, preserve cash, and then develop this asset as best they can. And so, I tried to value this company using a DCF model and some rough assumptions around the timeline to milestones, peak sales, margins, etc. But let me tell you, it's tough to value an early-stage biotech, especially without knowing how good the data is, how much cash they actually have on hand, etc. The biggest risks here, of course, are whether or not the asset works and whether or not it can even be developed properly with the limited cash on hand. And so, in terms of EPS, well, obviously, it doesn't matter now because they're going private, but previously, they were reporting negative earnings per share, which is not surprising given that they had extremely high R&D expenses, about $24 million per year, and no revenue. And so, in terms of the valuation, if we look out 5 years, there's a few catalysts that could drive the CVR and shareholder value. First, the company filed an IND in Q4 of 2025. That would suggest an unadjusted valuation gain of $10 million, which discounted to present value would be about $8.3 million. And then we might start to see early phase 1 safety and biomarker data in Q2 of 2026. That could suggest a $50 million unadjusted value, which discounted and risk-adjusted would be about $8.7 million. And then in Q2 of 2027, maybe they license this asset out or get early approval. And so, that could suggest a $100 million unadjusted value, which discounted and risk-adjusted would be about $14.5 million. And finally, in 2029, assuming commercialization, which might be a bit optimistic, but assuming a $100 million net income and a present value of $36 million. And so, if we sum those up and add the initial cash payment of 36 cents, we get about $0.8 per share, so that feels reasonable. I think there's a lot of risk and this isn't a guarantee by any means, but there could be value here for investors who participate in the transaction. And so ultimately, this is a pure biotech play. You're betting on a specific asset in a niche area, but there's high risk, high reward potential. Thank you for watching. Subscribe if you'd like to see more videos like this in the future.